Happy to be here. And I'm going to talk about the email address as a key piece of data in OSINT research. So again, if you're doing any type of research on an individual, so due diligence, fraud investigations, journalistic work, you name it, email addresses are a key piece of data. And in this presentation, you'll learn about how you can extract the maximum amount of information with an email address with minimal starting data, how to find a user's Google Maps profile and learn about their location and habits, and how to set up a virtual smartphone on your computer and take advantage of contact syncing. And also it's really good for any type of OSINT research in general. And most importantly, the OSINT mindset tips, because tools are not everything. I'm going to jump right into today's case study. So I work in the forensics practice in Grand Thornton in Toronto. And we deal with a variety of fraud investigations. This was a very complex case I worked on, and it had a lot of different elements, forensic accounting and such, but a simple OSINT trick was a real big game changer. So we had this client, not going to specify the industry or anything, but one day panic breaks out. They find that somebody falsified important financial records that they relied on. And there was a key suspect, say his name was Oswaldo Conway, which is a completely made up name, which I also realize it's a weird name, but it has a purpose for the story. So he was kind of at the right place at the right time. They want to speak to him, figure out what's going on, but he actually left the company some time ago. And because this project had an international workforce, they had no way of really knowing where he was. So my boss comes to me. I'm kind of the OSINT investigator. And he says, we have to speak to this guy ASAP. So at that point, all I had was his name and less known workplace. And when I start digging, I'm really not finding anything. He was kind of a ghost. So where's Oswaldo? We're going to get to that in a bit. First, let's have a look at an email address, for example. So MikeRealtor75@rogers.com. Right off the bat, I have a name. I have possibly a job. Realtor 75 could be a year of date of birth or year of birth or another meaningful number. Altogether, Mike Realtor 75 could be a moniker that this person is using across different social media. And Rogers is an ISP-based email of users of Rogers Communications in Canada. So there's a clue about location. All these things are PII, right? Personally identifiable information. So emails are really interesting for what they contain in of themselves, and also the web of connections that they can unlock, right? Because the interesting thing about emails is that they tend to persist over time. So nicknames change, phone numbers can change, but people tend to use the same email address for years and years. And they also connect it to social media, financial accounts, personal communication. So they're super reliable for tracking digital footprints. I do want to say that I know that there are some really good paid tools where you just put in an email address and it kind of gives you immediately a bunch of social media that it links to and things like that. But for this presentation, I'm going to be speaking about free tools and methods only. Some ways to find somebody's email address if you don't have it. So let's think about somebody that works in a specific company, for example, Oswaldo's former employer. Obviously, you're going to look at the company's website and not just the contact page. I advise also to look at the privacy policy and terms and conditions for useful clues. If the website is inactive or it has been archived, definitely check out the Wayback Machine for previous versions that may have been archived. And Google Dorking, I have some suggestions for searches you can try on Google. So for example, if you search for site:company.com, you're going to get results only from that specific website. So you can do that. You can search for the individual name anytime their name was mentioned on the website, or you can search for anytime the company's domain has been mentioned on the website. I would also search file type. For example, PDFs are really good. You can find marketing material that contains emails and contact information. If you know that the person works at a specific company, but you don't know how their emails are set up, so it can be, for example, first name, first letter of the first name, last name. You can see some examples there on the right. You can use tools that predict email addresses based on common formats. So emailformat.com and Metric Sparrow also good tools that I would use. And definitely also check out some social media websites where people may post their email addresses. So can be LinkedIn, can be x.com. Facebook Marketplace is really good. They do redact emails now, but people sometimes do share their email address kind of with special characters. In the bottom screenshot, you have an example. WHOIS searches. So when people register their domain, they need to provide contact information. So name, address, phone, email. I like using viewdns.info for quick lookups. So you just put the email address of interest, and ideally the result is going to look like the bottom screenshot there. The thing is, nowadays, usually people pay extra to redact that information, so it won't be visible. The thing is, they may not have always done so in the past. So domains do need to be renewed from time to time. So historical domain search, WHOIS searches can be super useful. Usually it's not free to access those, but you can use whoisxmlapi.com. Their trial version gives you a good amount of tokens to play with. Quick case study. So I was working on an asset tracing investigation recently. And in asset tracing investigations, you maybe know where the person is, but they may be hiding assets of interest under a different name or in a foreign country. So for that one, I only had a name and an email address of an individual. His name was common this time, but the email address, it was a Gmail address. It led me to a profile photo, and we're gonna touch on that in a second. And with the photo, I was able to confirm social media profiles. Social media profiles showed that he mentioned a business. The business had a website. I was digging through the historical WHOIS records, found an address in a foreign country nobody thought he had any business in. and I pulled the land title. I found his wife's name, date of birth. So yeah, assets confirmed. Oh, why did it? I think somebody changed the presentation to something else.
Give me 1 second. We'll get you back to yours. Thank you.
Stick around because we're going to have to find out what happened to Oswaldo. Okay. Yeah, next up. So if you do have an email address, but you want to confirm that it's valid, it's an actual email, that it's real. So obvious websites to go to, email verifiers do just that. Hunter.io is a really good one. They kind of make sure that the email address is valid, that there's the light is on, that there's somebody there to get your message on the other side. It does require you to use your professional email address to set up an account with Hunter. So Email Hippo, also great option. I would say also try breach databases, for example, if I've been pwned, because if you search for somebody's email address and it's linked to breaches and passwords and social media, stands to reason that it's a real email that has been in use. Other ways you can verify an email, see if it's connected to social media. So Sion.io is an anti-fraud platform. So you can see in the screenshot there on the top, they are going to give you some social media profiles associated with the emails, not the links or monikers, but they will tell you if it's on there, and that's a good start. Predict a search similar capabilities. Also, don't sleep on Skype, because a lot of people forgot that they had Skype, but if you look up an email address on Skype, you can get their location and photos. All right, so I have my email address now, and what do I do next? So let's say my email address of interest is keanureeves@gmail.com, just hypothetically. The next thing I would suggest doing is finding the GAIA ID, the Google Accounts and ID Administration ID. I'm gonna call it the Gaia ID. And that's the unique identifier that is attached to Google products. So think Gmail, Google Drive, Google Maps, even YouTube. Not all products that have a Gaia ID would be publicly visible, but some are, and it can be super useful. Also important to mention that it's not only traditional Gmail addresses that would have a Gaia ID. So for example, if a company has its own company domain emails, but they are attached to Google Workspace, then they would also have a Gaia ID. And I like using Epios for quick lookups of the Gaia. They're actually a sponsor at Sense. And you can see the number is right there in the red circle. Just put the email address and it finds it for you. It also does the hard work of finding some products that it links to, and social media and a few other things. Castric clues is another alternative, another way to find the Gaia ID. And ghunt is really, really good for extracting data from a Gmail address. It does require Python, so we're not going to get into that today. Yeah, so for me, the most interesting thing is to find the Google Maps account that is attached to a user, to a Gmail address, right? It has so much value in my day-to-day investigations. So great to find information about somebody's location, their habits, businesses that they're affiliated with, because, people always comment to hype their own businesses. So you can see here in the example, by the way, this screenshot on the right is not attached to keanureeves@gmail.com. I just kind of wanted to stay on theme. But yeah, you can find comments and all the interesting things. Okay, back to Osvaldo now. Can you see where I'm going with this? So I was, at the time, I was sitting there thinking, well, I can't find anything about this guy, but I know that he has a really unique name that I've never heard before. So I just had a hunch that somebody with a name like that is going to use it as their Gmail address on its own. No numbers or nicknames. So I thought, I'm going to just go ahead and guess it. Worst case, I wasted 10 seconds. So I typed Osvaldo Conway at gmail.com on Epios, and bam, the email address exists. I click the Google Maps link associated with it, and just, yeah, lo and behold, this guy was the most active Google Maps reviewer I have ever seen. Every place he went to, every coffee shop, every store, he's leaving a review. Every time I refresh the page, there's another review. So I start cross-referencing the locations of his reviews with our clients' project sites. They match. And with that, I was able to confirm that I have the right profile for the profile for the right individual. I know where he is, and I have an active email address for him. And that's all I'm going to share about him for now. But the key takeaway here is that even people that kind of keep a low profile on the internet sometimes do leave breadcrumbs in unexpected places. Some of you may be thinking, well, like, that worked for you that one time. I don't want to guess email addresses all the time. Is it going to work for me? So let's break down the methodology a little bit more. I'm not telling you to guess email addresses all the time. What I am saying is it's important to play with tools and kind of try to approach them in different ways every time. It is going to make you a better investigator because things always change. The next thing I want to say is, tools aside, think about the psychology of the person you're trying to look into. So think about my Mike Realtor example from before. Somebody who's older may be more likely to use an ISP-based email. Somebody who's younger may be more likely to use their Instagram username as their email address. Also, context. Is it their personal email? Is it their professional email? Location. Gmail, it is possible that your subject does not have a Gmail account, but Gmail does have 1.8 billion active users. So QQmail in China, 500 million, Webde in Germany, 17 million for comparison. So these kinds of stats are going to help you make an educated guess. Now, fun fact, did you know that dots don't matter in Gmail addresses? So oswaldoconway@gmail.com would be exactly the same as oswaldo.conway@gmail.com. If you were to send an email to both, it's the same Gaia ID for both. And also, you don't have to always guess the email address in its entirety. There are plenty of ways to find useful clues and other information. Which brings me to the second half of the presentation, Android emulators, which is just what it sounds like. It's a way to emulate an Android smartphone, but on your computer, which is going to give you access to all the apps. It's not so much about calling and texting. These are usually used for app developers or for gaming, but we can also use them for OSINT research. They're really great because, if you were to use a burner phone, it's not as good for privacy concerns and as well as for documenting your work as using an Android emulator. I was actually using burner phones a lot in the beginning of my career as a private investigator. And what I would do is kind of set up all my sock puppet accounts and plug in a phone number or an email address in my burner phone contacts, and hopefully it syncs. And then I was able to find a lot of contact information, monikers information, other information like that. So the good news is you do not need a burner phone anymore to do that. I like using the platforms Nox Player or BlueStacks for that. Both are in the screenshots. They're entirely free. I do know that Intel Techniques recommend using Android Studio, but it's another platform, but I do not have experience with that myself. Here's an example for something you can do on a mobile interface, but not so much on a web interface, is taking advantage of the forgot password feature. So if you have somebody's phone number and you want to confirm that it links to them, you're going to find other information, you want to find partial email information and corroborate that, that's something you can also do if you have an Android emulator. Just use the Facebook app and you put the phone number of interest and see all the clues that it gives you in the password recovery options. Now, the fun part for me is to take advantage of the contact syncing. So what you're going to do is you're going to need to set up your own Gmail account to link it to the emulator, because you're going to need a Gmail account to download apps from the App Store. And so what you're going to do is just set up the account and add the contact email address of interest, such as keanureeves@gmail.com in your Gmail contacts. Yeah, and just save it. And next thing, we're gonna take advantage of platforms that offer contact discovery, such as Instagram or Facebook. So correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I know, social media companies don't really disclose how the friend suggestions algorithm works, right? It's kind of a mystery. You get a friend suggestion and it's kind of like, how do they know I know this person? And because of privacy restrictions, with traditional reverse email tools, you may not be able to link email to a social media profile such as Facebook or LinkedIn. But using this method is a way to bypass that, because these platforms do want you to connect with people. And bam, you may just find your subject in the friend suggestions. Now, of course, this is not exact science. It's more of an art. And it also requires more work to do to confirm, to make sure that it makes sense, that the email connect to this account, and do all the other digging around it. But it is something I used to do a lot when doing investigations into people that sell counterfeits. So, for example, people that sell fake brands, designer goods on Instagram, they usually hide their identity. So if I had their email address, that's kind of a roundabout way to link them. Also, you can see in the circle there that it thinks I'm using an actual Samsung smartphone. So that's another example that how the Android emulator really does work like a phone. Yeah, the last thing I want to touch on today is passwords and leaked credentials, because you can't have an email without a password. And there's a lot of leaked credentials circulating on the internet nowadays. I will say, depending on your location, it can be ethically or legally questionable if you can access those for your research. So I don't really have free tools or databases I would recommend for this. I do want to say I usually access those when doing working on incident response files, when I'm kind of trying to look for any leaks associated with my client's domain, any passwords, and kind of see vulnerabilities, see how the threat actor maybe gained access. And by doing so, I keep seeing more and more interesting things that people put in there as their passwords, that people put crazy things, the names, phone numbers, dates, the things they like, their pets, everything. It is how I think about it is passwords can be a data point in and of itself. It's another data point that helps you connect the dots about an individual or an address. And you can see in this example on the right there that even people who should know better sometimes go for lazy passwords. So Mark Zuckerberg, they're speculating that he used the password because he just became a new dad. I don't know. It is possible, but I think what it shows, and kind of the takeaway of all the examples that we talked about today, is how OSINT links these two things. It links the technical side of things and the psychology of people, because people are creatures of habit. Sometimes they cut corners, and sometimes things that people think are insignificant can be really significant when you put the pieces of the puzzle together. And yeah, that's what OSINT means for me. That's it. So thanks so much for having me. If you liked my content, I do post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and also my podcast is coming up hopefully next month, Investigators Talk. It's gonna be on all platforms. So thank you so much.